Hey, it's Mads and welcome back to my channel. Hi, how are you? I am a beginner seamstress. Seamstress is a strong word, I will say. I am self-taught and I am literally learning everything along with you guys. So I wanted to make an in-depth video on one of my favorite techniques that I've learned over the past year, and that is a French seam. It boggled my mind for the longest time, so I have broken it down here in the way that makes the most sense to me, and hopefully that will help you figure it out too if you're struggling. Before we look at a French seam, I'm going to show you a regular seam. Here we have two pieces of satin fabric that I've joined together in a regular schmegular seam. I just have done a straight stitch all the way down, and here's what it looks like on the inside. There's no extra finishing. These raw edges are just gonna fray out. As you can see, they're just like gnarly, and over time this is not gonna hold. You put this in the wash and it will just come right undone. So we need to do something to help this seam last longer and also be more sturdy for wear. And if you don't have a serger, this is a great option. So here is the same fabric, but joined together with a French seam. We have the top stitch you can see, and that's like the original seam there. And here's what it looks like in the back. It's a huge difference. Everything is encased and it's super sturdy and strong. Like, this is not coming apart in the wash. Here's the two insides, like side by side, so you can really see the difference there. This is gonna just come apart any second, and this is here to stay, and it looks so much more professional and well made. So how do we get to this point? I'm gonna show you guys how we get here. I'm gonna just show you the things I like to have on hand when I'm doing French seams. I like to have a pair of needle tweezers. I use these to pull anything out of my sewing machine or move anything around, or just like as an extra level of control. These are just like needle nose tweezers. They work great. I have pins. I love a pin. I'm a pin hound, so any sort of pins. I do have some satin pins with us today. They are super fine and thin. That will be good for the type of fabric we're using. I have some safety scissors, just like your basic little scissors. Again, they're just like a great little thing to snip and get into stuff or work through seams. I like to have them close. An actual pair of scissors. You never know when you're gonna need them. I use these to like cut the threads at the end. And I have my rotary cutter. The rotary cutter is not a necessity. I just like it because it's quick and faster, especially if you're doing like an actual garment or rounded edges or anything like that. A rotary cutter is great. You can do all of this with a normal pair of scissors and it will be just fine. It's just a lot of cutting. The other materials I'm using are a sewing machine that is loaded with thread. My bobbin is loaded as well. And I have my tabletop ironing board set up here, but I have been ironing on a towel up until now. So this ironing board isn't even a necessity. Just a basic iron is all you're gonna need. There are quite a few ironing steps. Okay, I'm gonna run through the bulk of this tutorial, walkthrough, explanation with these two fabrics being joined. I picked these in particular because this is what helped me understand, because it took me forever to figure this out. I've been sewing for over a year and the French seam has always boggled my little brain. We're gonna use this very sheer mesh chiffon-y fabric and this dark navy so that you're able to see the inside of the seam at the end and you get a clearer picture of what it looks like, and hopefully that helps you understand it faster than I did. At this point, there's no right and wrong side of the fabric, so don't worry about that, but you do start with wrong sides facing instead of right sides facing, and I'll show you that when we go and do this part. Before we figure that out, I just want to show you how the seam is created and what it looks like, so that helps you better understand why we do it that way, or why a French seam, the steps are. But first, let's just like go through the mechanics of a French seam here. So I'm gonna line up my fabric, my mesh on top only because I like to be able to see it. And I'm gonna pop it on my sewing machine here, and this fabric can be kind of finicky, and I'm putting it on the first tick. It says 3/8 of an inch. It's also like a centimeter. And do a couple forward stitches, and I am gonna back stitch these just because that's what you would do in making a garment, and just sew straight. Yes, I'm missing my cover. Don't bully me about it. I don't know what I did. So now we have our first straight stitch. At this point, you've made a normal seam. This is very much just a normal seam. This is where things start to get fancy. We're gonna take it over to the ironing board. And on the board here, we are ironing it like normal. I just like to press the seam flat first and then open it up. And for the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to press it to the side of the sheer fabric just so it's easier to see. Give it a quick little press. And we're gonna go in with our scissors and trim this down by about half. You can use your rotary cutter here, you can use your scissors. You just wanna get down, I don't know, about half or as little as a quarter off. It doesn't need to be perfect unless you're working with like a super sheer material. And now I've got it much smaller and I'm just gonna reinforce that press on the other side now. Press it to the side. Now you can see we have this doubled up part down here and this is where things get fancy. We're gonna fold everything over itself and press it again. So now you can see that seam we had is now on the outside on this side and everything we just cut is now inside sandwiched between our two pieces of fabric. I'm just gonna press that flat. The seam that we just put through the sewing machine is right here. And the inside is on the inside like a book. Like if you were to open it up, it's now a little flap in here, yeah? Right, back to the sewing machine. I like to do it at the edge of my presser foot here. That's the guide that I use. But what you really wanna be looking at is this hole in here. I'll show you just a sec. I'm looking at this where the needle's going in, not necessarily the side, because I want to make sure all of this folded over part is encased in here. I can tell just by looking at it where my needle sits here and the edge. Using this presser foot as my guide will cover it, and that's what I'm gonna watch. I'm gonna make sure it lines up here and is staying straight here. At this point, you have your French seam made. You can see in here, this is why I did it in the mesh, so you could see all of this is now encased. So this is that first seam we made on the outside. Now we have a second seam that we made here, and all of that loose, frayed, raw edge is sandwiched now in between two stitches and is super strong. The only other thing you need to do is press this open and flat. All right, here we go, our French seam. So on the outside, it looks just like the regular one. It looks just like a normal seam. But on the inside, we get this beautiful finished edge with all of the frayed fabric or the raw edge of the fabric tucked inside, and it's this little flap. And you could totally just leave it like this. If you're doing a project where you're lining it, or this is the lining and you want to do French seams, leave it like this. You don't need to do the extra step. But on projects where you want to add a little extra detail or you want an exposed stitch line, do this extra step. We all know I'm extra, so I like to do this either in a matching thread or a contrasting thread, whatever you feel like works best for your project. I love to do a top stitch here. Working from the back, I go back to the sewing machine, I line everything up just like I did before, and I line my needle up with the edge of the flap, making sure everything's pulled out, and I do an extra stitch here. From the front of our fabric, it would look like this with the nice folded crisp edge and then the beautiful top stitch on top of it. And then in the back, that little flap we had that was flipping is now held down nice and everything will lay super duper flat. Now that we have the steps, I'm going to show you on fabric that has a clear front and back, like a wrong and a right side, because this is the part that always confused me. Here we have this beautiful pink satin. We're really using it because it has a really distinct front and back, or a wrong and a right side as it's called in. So using the shiny side as our right side of our fabric for this demonstration and the matte or the dull side as the wrong side, let's go through the steps to make this French seam with the extra level layer of wrong and right sides. You would normally put right sides together like this, not with the French seam. You start with wrong sides together. And that is because we need to do 2 seams. All right, I'm gonna use the first tick again, a 3/8 of an inch or a centimeter. I'm gonna sew my first seam. First stitch put in. Now it is time to trim this up. Press the front and the back so it's nice and ready. Now we are taking the right sides together now, sandwiching that raw edge in between. Time for the second stitch, just like before. The presser foot right here as my guide. Right now we have our little burrito made in there and everything is tucked away. Our right sides are facing out like they should be, and our wrong sides now have that little flap. And there we go. The classic French seam, and it has that flap in. I'll show you guys the other one. So this is the right side of the fabric on that other demonstration we did, and here's the right side here. You can see this one has the extra top stitch and this one doesn't. And then on the inside, this one's got the little flap left and this one has it sewn down. Both are great and they both just serve like a different purpose and can be used pretty interchangeably. They're exactly the same steps except for this one has the extra top stitch. I hope that me showing you guys like this helps it makes more sense to you. It took me forever to wrap my brain around it, and it is such a useful stitch, especially if you don't have a serger or access to one or don't have the money to invest. This is such a simple, easy way to elevate the clothes you're making. Any garment or really any project can be elevated by using French seams. They are one of the easiest ways I found to really take project or garment from like craft to store-bought, or it does take a little extra time, but the more comfortable you get with your sewing machine, the more comfortable you get sewing, the faster and easier it becomes. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a like. If you liked me, please click subscribe. I am so happy to have you. Please stay tuned. I post videos every Sunday, and for the next 3 months, I think you guys are gonna be getting a little bit of like a video like this every Wednesday. I have a big list of things. If there's anything in particular you would love for me to like really break down like I did in this video, let me know and I will add it to my list. I will see y'all later.